He mocked the girl. She put him on the floor. Part 1. The transport shuttle banked smoothly through the docking corridor and pressed her face against the viewport to get her first real look at the Galactic Collegiate Academy. The station was enormous, a spinning wheel of silver and glass that orbited the soft blue world of Prime. Lights sparkled across its surface like stars, marking thousands of windows and landing bays. Somewhere inside that massive structure, she would spend the next 4 years learning alongside the students from across known space. Her stomach fluttered with nerves, not fear exactly, but the weight of what this opportunity meant. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 30 years. Humans were still the newcomers, still proving themselves worthy of a seat at the table. Only 15 humans had ever attended the academy before her. She would be the 16th. The shuttle settled into its berth with barely a tremor, gathered her 2 small bags and joined the stream of students flowing through the airlock. The crowd was a riot of color and form. A moved past on 6 legs, its chitinous body painted with traditional clan markings. A pair of floated by, their gas-filled bodies bobbing gently in the station's carefully controlled atmosphere. 3 walked together, their iridescent scales catching the light as they gestured with multiple arms. Felt small and plain by comparison. Human. Brown skin, dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, average height for her species but short by galactic standards. She wore the standard Academy arrival uniform that had been shipped to Earth 3 months ago, the fabric automatically adjusting to the station's slightly lower gravity. The orientation hall was vast enough to hold 3,000 students. Found a seat near the back and listened as the dean, a distinguished with flowing robes and kind eyes, welcomed them all. He spoke of unity, cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge. He reminded them that they came from 1,000 different worlds, but here they would forge bonds that transcended species and culture. Wanted to believe it, she really did. The trouble started on the 3rd day. She was in the materials science lab, struggling with a loaded with sample containers and research equipment. The cart's controls were designed for beings with more than 2 manipulator appendages, and she was doing her best to manage with just her hands. The equipment wobbled dangerously as she guided the cart around a corner. Need help? The voice was smooth, cultured, and dripping with amusement. Looked up to see a watching her from across the corridor. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with scales that shimmered blue and green. 4 arms hung at his sides, each ending in 3-fingered hands. His eyes were large and golden, with horizontal pupils that gave him an expression of permanent skepticism. "I'm okay, thank you," said, keeping her voice polite. She'd been warned about this. Not everyone in the galaxy was thrilled about humans joining the community. Earth was what they called a Class 12, a planet so hostile that the fact humans had evolved there at all was considered remarkable. High gravity, extreme weather, predators that hunted in packs, diseases that could kill in days. Most species found the idea of Earth horrifying. They didn't move. His friends appeared behind him, 3 more students with the same amused expressions. "You certainly look okay," he said. "For a primitive, I mean. By the way, my family holds the 3rd seat in the Trade Congress. And you are?" "From Earth," said, drawing out the planet's name like it tasted bad. "The world where everything is trying to kill you. Tell me, is it true that your sky rains acid, that your ground shakes and splits open, that your sun's radiation would burn most civilized species to ash?" Tightened her grip on the controls. "Some of that is exaggerated. But not all of it." Stepped closer, using his height to loom over her. "I've read about Earth. Your people evolved through constant warfare. You killed each other for resources, for territory, for ideas. You still have weapons designed specifically to kill other humans. It's barbaric." "We're trying to be better," said quietly. Laughed, and his friends joined in. "Of course you are. That's why you're here, isn't it? To learn how civilized beings conduct themselves." He reached out with one of his 4 hands and tapped making it wobble. "Let me know if you need help with the technology. I know it must be confusing for someone from such a primitive world." He walked away before could respond. She stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, then continued toward her lab station. It was fine. She could handle a few rude comments. She'd dealt with worse on Earth. But didn't stop. Over the following weeks, he made a habit of finding her. In the cafeteria, he would comment loudly about eating habits when she sat down with her meal. In the library, he would ask if she needed help reading the standard Galactic script. In the common areas, he would tell elaborate jokes about humans to his growing circle of friends, always just loud enough for her to hear. "Did you hear about the human who tried to join a debate team?" he would say. "They kept solving their arguments with violence because that's all understand. How many humans does it take to change a light panel? Just one, but they'll probably try to hit it with a rock first. I heard humans actually enjoy pain, something about their stress hormones. Can you imagine? What kind of species evolves to like suffering?" Tried to ignore it. She focused on her studies, which were demanding enough to occupy most of her attention. Quantum physics didn't care what planet you came from. Mathematical proofs were the same in any language. She could lose herself in the work and forget about's voice. But it wore on her. She was far from home, far from anyone who understood what it meant to be human. The other two humans at the academy were both fourth-year students, busy with their final projects. She'd met them once at an informal gathering, and they'd been kind but distant. Everyone was fighting their own battles. Professor, her xenobiology instructor, noticed her struggling with a practical exam and asked if everything was all right. Assured her it was just adjustment stress. A being that looked like a collection of floating crystal shards hummed with concern but didn't press further. The other students seemed to take lead. Not all of them, but enough. They gave space in the hallways, not hostile but distant. She became the oddity, the reminder that some species came from worlds that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. Ate alone most days. She studied alone. She took long walks through the observation decks, staring out at the stars and wondering if she'd made a mistake coming here. Then came the evening in the communal dining hall. Was carrying her tray to an empty table when she felt someone bump into her from behind. The impact was sudden and hard, sending her tray flying. Food splattered across the floor in a rainbow of alien cuisines. Her drink, some kind of tea, spread in a purple puddle. "Oh, how clumsy of me," his voice said from behind her. "I didn't see you there. You're so small after all." Laughter rippled through the nearby tables. Knelt down and started gathering the empty containers. Her face burned, but she kept her expression neutral. Just clean it up. Just keep moving. She felt pressure on her shoulder. One of 4 hands rested there, not helping but pushing down slightly. The gesture was unmistakable. Dominance. Control. "You really are better suited to crawling on the ground, aren't you?" said. His voice carried across the dining hall. More students were watching now, some with concern, others with amusement. "It's your natural position, down in the dirt where you evolved." Something inside went very quiet. She'd been patient. She'd been understanding. She'd told herself that this was part of being a bridge between Earth and the galaxy, that she had to rise above the ignorance and prejudice. She'd swallowed every insult, every mocking comment, every casual dismissal of her species and her worth. But everyone has limits. Set down the containers she'd gathered. She stood slowly, deliberately, feeling the station's 0.8 g gravity that was so gentle compared to Earth's crushing pull. Her muscles, built for a world that wanted to drag her down with every step, felt coiled and ready. She turned and looked up really looked at him, meeting his golden eyes directly for the first time since they'd met. "You've never actually been in a fight, have you?" Her voice was calm, almost friendly. The scales flushed darker with what she'd learned to recognize as indignation. "What?" "A fight, physical conflict. You've never done it," tilted her head slightly. "Have you?" drew himself up to his full height, towering over her. Civilized beings don't resort to physical violence. We evolved past such barbarism ago. We settle our disputes through debate, through law, through social pressure. He gestured with all four arms. But I suppose a human wouldn't understand that. Nodded slowly. Right, that's what I thought. She turned to walk away. Behind her, she heard his voice rise with triumph. Running away. Typical cowardice when faced with intellectual superiority. Stopped, she looked back over her shoulder. I'm not running. I'm giving you a chance to stop while you still have your dignity. The dining hall had gone completely quiet. Hundreds of students from dozens of species watched the confrontation with a mixture of concern and fascination. Some had heard stories about humans, tales of mercenaries who fought in the conflicts, explorers who survived on worlds that killed research teams, soldiers who refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. But those were just stories, weren't they? His confidence seemed to grow with the attention. His friends had gathered around him, clicking and chirping encouragement in their native language. He spread all four arms wide in a gesture of supreme confidence. The Academy maintains a sanctioned combat arena, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. It's provided for primitive species who need to work out their violent impulses in a controlled environment. If you're so confident, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate this supposed physical superiority. He was certain she would refuse. The arena was a relic rarely used. No civilized student would actually fight. It was beneath them. Smile didn't reach her eyes. Tomorrow, 1700 hours, full contact, yield, or incapacitation. She paused. Standard gravity. Laughed, a musical sound that was probably beautiful in other contexts. Standard for whom, exactly? Galactic Standard. 1.2 G's voice was perfectly level. Wouldn't want you to claim I had an unfair advantage. The murmur that went through the crowd was almost physical. Galactic Standard gravity was higher than most garden worlds, designed as a compromise that no single species found perfectly comfortable. For, raised on a 1G world, it would be challenging but manageable. For, coming from Earth's crushing 1G, it would be barely noticeable. Or so the witnesses thought. Agreed, said quickly, before he could think better of it. His pride wouldn't let him back down, not in front of so many witnesses. Nodded once and walked away, leaving her spilled meal on the floor. Behind her, the dining hall erupted into excited conversation. By the time she reached her quarters, the entire academy knew about the challenge. In her small room, sat on her bed and let out a long, slow breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, not with fear but with the rush of finally pushing back. She stood and began to stretch, moving through old exercises her grandmother had taught her. Grandmother had been a Marine, tough as tungsten, who'd insisted that all her learn to defend themselves. Not because you'll need to fight, she'd said, but because knowing you can makes all the difference. Practiced movements she hadn't used since leaving Earth. Her body remembered. Muscle memory ran deep when it was trained under Earth's heavy pull. She hadn't come to the academy to fight. She'd come to learn, to build bridges, to represent her species with grace and intelligence. But she hadn't come to be humiliated either. Tomorrow would learn what every human child knew. The people from choose peace not because they can't fight, but because they can. Part 2. The news spread through the Academy's networks like fire through oxygen. By morning, the challenge between and had become the most discussed topic on every student forum, chat channel, and social platform. Recordings of the dining hall confrontation circulated endlessly, analyzed frame by frame for any hint of what might happen. The betting pools opened within hours. Was the overwhelming favorite. The odds reflected what seemed like simple mathematics. He stood nearly 7 feet tall and weighed close to 200 pounds of lean muscle. He had 4 arms, each capable of independent action. His scales provided natural armor that could turn away most casual impacts. He'd been training in the Academy's gymnasium for weeks, working with a combat theory instructor to prepare for what he now called teaching the lesson in civilized conduct. Was 5'6" and maybe 130 pounds. She had 2 arms, no natural armor, and came from a species that most galactic physicians described as alarmingly fragile in their medical databases. Human bones could break, human skin could tear, human joints could dislocate with the wrong pressure. The fact that humans had survived on a spoke more to their adaptability and tool use than any physical prowess. The smart money was on winning in under 30 seconds. But a smaller group of students, mostly those who'd studied Earth history or served in mixed-species military units, placed quiet bets the other way. They'd read the reports from the conflicts, where human soldiers had fought alongside galactic community forces. They'd seen the footage of human rescue teams operating in conditions that would kill most species. They knew something the others didn't. Humans were survivors. Spent the morning in class trying to focus on her quantum physics lecture. Professor N, with compound eyes that could track multiple students simultaneously, kept glancing her way with concern. After class, the professor approached with a gentle clicking of mandibles. "Miss, I feel obliged to mention that you can withdraw from this challenge without shame. Comes from a respected family, but his behavior has been noted by faculty. We can address this through proper channels." Appreciated the concern, she really did, but she shook her head. "Thank you, Professor, but this is something I need to do." Anne's antennae drooped slightly. "I understand. Please be careful. The medical teams will be standing by, but injuries in sanctioned combat are not covered by standard health insurance. The costs could be significant." "I'll be careful," promised. She skipped lunch, her stomach too tight to handle food. Instead, she went to the Academy's observation deck, a vast curved space that looked out onto the stars. Prime turned slowly below, its blue oceans and green continents a reminder of gentler worlds than Earth. Another human found her there. Was a fourth-year student, one of only 2 other humans at the Academy. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark skin and graying hair at his temples despite being only 26. He'd been a cargo pilot before coming to the Academy, flying relief supplies to disaster zones across Earth. "Heard you got yourself into some trouble," he said, coming to stand beside her at the viewport. "Word travels fast." "It does when someone challenges a human to physical combat," smiled slightly. "Most species don't understand what that means. They think fighting is something you do when you're too primitive to use words. And we know different. We know fighting is something you do when words have failed and there's something worth protecting." He looked at her seriously. "Is this worth it? You've got 3.5 years left here. Putting on his ass might feel good, but it could make your life harder." Watched Prime turn. He put his hand on my shoulder while I was on the ground. He pushed me down like I was an animal. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I came here to build bridges, to show that humans can be more than warriors and survivors, but I won't be anyone's lesson in dominance. Not his, not anyone's." Nodded slowly. "Fair enough, you know how to fight." "My grandmother taught me. Marine Corps 2 tour in the Pacific. She made sure all of us learned." "Good, then you know the most important rule." "What's that?" "Don't fight angry, don't fight to hurt him, fight to end it." Turned to leave, then paused. "And everyone watching is going to learn something tomorrow. Make sure it's the right lesson." The rest of the day crawled past. Attended her xenobiology lab, performed her assigned experiments, and submitted her data reports. She moved through the familiar routines, letting the structure calm her mind. In martial arts her grandmother had taught her, the body followed the mind. A calm mind meant a controlled body. A controlled body meant victory. By 1600 hours, students were already gathering at the arena. The facility was located in one of the station's outer rings, a space designed for physical training and combat sports. Most species didn't use it much, but it existed as part of the Academy's commitment to diverse student needs. The arena itself was a circular room 50 feet across, floored with impact-absorbent padding. Transparent walls allowed observers to watch from a surrounding gallery that could hold up to 1,000 spectators. Environmental controls could adjust gravity, atmosphere, temperature, and even electromagnetic fields to accommodate different species' needs. Arrived at 1650 hours, the gallery was packed. Easily 800 students had shown up, pressed against the transparent walls or watching from tiered seating. She recognized faces from her classes, students she'd shared corridors with, even a few professors who'd come to observe. She wore a simple academy-issue training suit, black and form-fitting, designed to move with the body without catching or tearing. Her feet were bare. Her hair was tied back tightly. She'd removed all jewelry, even the small earth pendant her mother had given her before she left home. In a small preparation room, she performed final stretches. Her muscles felt loose and ready. Her breathing was steady. Her mind was clear. In-referee markings clicked into the room. "Miss, we need to review the rules. This is a sanctioned combat match, which means lethal force is strictly prohibited. The match ends when one participant yields verbally, is rendered unconscious, or sustains an injury that the medical team deems dangerous. Do you understand?" "Yes." "The gravity will be set to galactic standard. 1.2 G. Are you comfortable with this?" Almost smiled. Earth's gravity was approximately 1 G, but that was at sea level. She'd grown up in Denver, a mile above sea level, where the effective gravity felt even heavier due to the altitude. The Academy's 0.8 G environment felt like moving through water. Fighting at 1.2 G would feel almost normal. "I'm comfortable," she said. "Medical teams are standing by. If you feel you're in danger at any point, yield immediately. Pride is not worth permanent injury." "I understand." The referee led her out to the arena floor. The roar of 800 voices washed over her, a mixture of cheers, jeers, and excited chatter in a dozen languages. She walked to the center of the circle and waited. Entered to a wave of applause from his supporters. He looked magnificent, scales polished until they gleamed, all 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of confidence. He wore a training suit similar to hers but modified for his anatomy, his golden eyes fixed on her with absolute certainty. The referee positioned himself at the edge of the circle. Combatants approach, and moved to stand 3 feet apart. Up close, his height advantage was even more pronounced. He looked down at her with something between pity and amusement. "Last chance to yield, I don't want to hurt you." Said nothing. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, "Never talk when you can act. Words waste energy." The referee raised one chitinous arm. "This match will be conducted according to Academy combat regulations. No strikes to sensory organs. No strikes to reproductive anatomy. No biting. No holds targeting the respiratory system. Match ends at yield or incapacitation. Combatants, do you understand the rules?" "Yes," said confidently. "Yes," said quietly. "Then take your positions." They stepped back to opposite sides of the circle, settled into a neutral stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at her sides. She looked relaxed, almost casual, assumed a more dramatic pose, all 4 arms raised in what was probably a traditional fighting stance. The crowd noise built to a crescendo. Students leaned forward against the transparent walls. In the gallery, someone started a countdown chant that others picked up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The referee's arm dropped. "Begin." Opened with what he clearly thought was an intimidating advance. All 4 arms spread wide, he moved forward in a stance designed to grapple. His combat theory instructor had taught him that with his reach and arm advantage, He should try to grab the smaller opponent and use leverage to force a submission. Simple, effective. The entire fight should be over in seconds. He'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. He'd studied recordings of human combat sports, analyzing their primitive techniques. He'd practiced with weighted training dummies. He'd even increased his time in the gymnasium's gravity adjustment room, working his way up to 1.2 G tolerance. What he hadn't done was fight anyone who knew how to fight back. Didn't retreat. She didn't circle away from his advance. She didn't try to stay out of range. She stepped forward. The movement was fast, faster than anyone in the gallery expected. Humans, for all their fragility, were ambush predators when they needed to be. Persistence hunters, pack coordinators. Her muscles, built under Earth's heavy pull, moved with explosive power in the relatively light 1.2 G field. She closed the distance before could adjust, getting inside his reach where his longer arms became a disadvantage. Her right hand struck his leading arm just above the elbow joint. Not a punch, but a precisely targeted palm strike. The angle was perfect. Elbow hyperextended, bending the wrong way. It didn't break, she'd calculated the force exactly, but the pain was immediate and intense. His arm went limp. His balance shifted. His body tried to compensate for the sudden loss of function in one limb. It was an automatic response, one he couldn't control. His foot hooked behind his knee at the same moment her other hand pushed against his chest. The movements were simultaneous, perfectly coordinated. Push high, pull low. Physics did the rest. Went down hard. The impact at 1.2 G was brutal. All the breath left his lungs in a whoosh that the gallery microphones picked up clearly. He hit the mat back first, his head protected by the padding, but his consciousness rattled. Before he could even process what had happened, had control. Her knee was on his chest, positioned over his sternum with just enough weight to make breathing difficult but not dangerous. She had one of his arms in a lock, the same arm she'd struck, held at an angle that could dislocate his shoulder if she applied more pressure. His other three arms flailed instinctively, trying to grab her, push her off anything. Shifted her weight slightly. Something in his shoulder made a grinding sound. He froze. "Yield," she said. Her voice was quiet, conversational, like she was asking him to pass a data pad. The gallery had gone completely silent. 800 students stared in shock at what they'd just witnessed. The entire exchange had taken perhaps 4 seconds from the referee's signal to on his back. Couldn't breathe properly with her knee on his chest. Couldn't move without risking real injury. His golden eyes were wide with shock and pain. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was bigger, stronger, better armed. This was supposed to be a lesson for the primitive, not. He tried to grab her with his free arms one more time, instinct overriding reason. His weight shifted again. The pressure on his shoulder increased. Pain shot through his entire body. "I said yield." Her voice was still calm, still almost gentle. "You wanted to know what it can do. This is mercy. Actual combat isn't civilized. It isn't fair. And it sure as hell isn't something you mock people about when you've never had to learn it." The pain in his shoulder intensified. Scales had gone pale with shock. In his peripheral vision, he could see the gallery full of witnesses, all watching his humiliation. "Yield," the word came out as a gasp. Released him immediately. She stood smoothly, offered her hand. Stared at it for a long moment, his mind still trying to process what had happened. Then, moving like an old person, he took her hand and let her help him to his feet. She steadied him, making sure he wouldn't fall. When she was certain he was stable, she spoke again, her voice pitched just loud enough for him to hear. "You're strong, you're smart. You didn't need to be cruel." She paused. "Humans don't want to be feared, we just want to be respected. There's a difference." Then she walked toward the exit. The referee was still standing in shock, having not had time to officially call the match. Bowed slightly to him as she passed, a gesture of respect, then continued out of the arena. Behind her stood alone in the center of the circle, one arm hanging limp, his breathing still ragged, staring at the mat where a 5'6" human girl had put him on the floor in 4 seconds. The gallery erupted into chaos. Voices in a dozen languages shouted questions, exclamations, theories. Students pressed against the walls, trying to see the replay on their data pads. The footage was already spreading across the Academy's networks, and from there out into the wider galaxy. In the exit corridor, leaned against the wall and let out a long, shaky breath. Her hands were trembling now, the adrenaline starting to fade. She'd been calm in the moment, her training carrying her through, but now the reality was setting in. She'd just fought in front of 800 witnesses. She'd put down someone who'd been tormenting her for weeks. She'd shown exactly what a human could do when pushed too far. And she had no idea what would happen next. Part 3. The medical team reached seconds after left. 2 doctors with their gentle manipulator tendrils examined his injured arm while a medic scanned for internal damage. The gallery slowly emptied, students filing out in small groups, their voices hushed with shock or loud with excitement depending on their perspective. Sat on the arena floor and let the doctors work. His shoulder throbbed where she'd applied pressure. His elbow ached from her opening strike. But worse than the physical pain was the crushing weight of humiliation. He'd been so confident, so certain. He'd trained for weeks, studied the theory, prepared himself mentally. And she'd ended it in 4 seconds. No permanent damage, the lead doctor announced, her translation device rendering her musical language into galactic standard. Hyperextended elbow, mild strain to the shoulder joint. You'll need to wear a support brace for a few days and avoid strenuous activity. The pain will fade in a week. Nodded mutely. His friends had vanished from the gallery the moment he hit the floor. He was alone with the medical team and the referee, who was filing his official report with methodical precision. The match duration was 4.3 seconds, the referee noted aloud, speaking into his recording device. Victor, of Earth. Method: submission via joint lock after successful takedown. No rule violations observed. Recommendation: update combat training protocols to include education about species capabilities. The words stung more than his injuries. Made it back to her quarters before the full weight of what she'd done crashed over her. She sat on her bed, still in her training suit, and stared at her hands. They'd stopped shaking, but she could still feel the impact of her palm's strike, the resistance of his joint, the moment of his surrender. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Never fight unless you have to, but when you have to, end it fast. Every second a fight continues is a second something can go wrong. She'd ended it fast. Her door chimed. She almost ignored it, but then a familiar voice called out, "Can I come in?" She opened the door, stood there with a medical kit and 2 containers of what looked like hot soup. He took one look at her face and smiled. "You're not hurt, good. Mind if I come in?" She stepped aside and he entered, setting the soup on her desk. "You were amazing out there. 4 seconds. I think that's going to be a record that stands for a while." "I didn't want to fight him," said quietly. "I know, but he didn't give you much choice." Sat in her desk chair. "Listen, the next few days are going to be interesting. You just became the most talked about student at the academy. Some people are going to see you as a hero. Others are going to be scared of you. Some are going to want to prove they're better." "Great," sat back on her bed. "This is exactly what I didn't want." "I know, but there's an opportunity here too," leaned forward. "You showed 800 witnesses that humans aren't just survivors or warriors. You showed restraint. You ended the fight without causing real harm. You offered him help afterward. That matters." "Does it?" "More than you know. The footage is spreading through the galactic networks. People are watching a human choose mercy when she could have chosen violence. That's not the story most species tell about." Thought about that while she ate the soup. It was some kind of broth, mild and soothing. stayed with her, not saying much, just present. After a while, she felt stable enough to access her data pad. Her message queue had exploded. Hundreds of students had sent her notes, ranging from congratulations to threats to requests for training. She ignored most of them, but one caught her eye. It was from Professor, her xenobiology instructor. "Miss, please come to my office tomorrow at 900. We need to discuss recent events." "I'm probably in trouble," said, showing the message. "Maybe, or maybe not is fair, she'll hear your side." He was right. The next morning, presented herself at Professor's office promptly at 900. The professor's crystalline form refracted the light in beautiful patterns across the walls. "Sit, please," said, her voice like wind chimes. "I watched the footage from yesterday's match. I also reviewed the security recordings from the dining hall and several other incidents over the past weeks." Stomach sank. "Professor, You showed remarkable restraint," interrupted. "Has been harassing you for nearly a month. Other faculty members and I have documented his behavior. Yesterday was simply the incident that made it impossible to ignore." "So I'm not in trouble." "You participated in a sanctioned combat match and won decisively without violating any rules. The Academy cannot punish you for that." His crystalline structure shifted, and had learned enough to recognize it as a gesture of approval. "However, I want to discuss what happens next." "What do you mean?" "You've demonstrated that most students at this academy lack: combat ability, tactical thinking, and perhaps most importantly, restraint under pressure." His form sparkled. "The academy offers elective courses in self-defense and physical training. These courses are chronically understaffed because few faculty members have practical combat experience. I'm authorized to offer you a teaching assistant position if you're interested." Blinked. "You want me to teach other students to fight?" "I want you to teach them what you taught everyone yesterday. That strength without restraint is barbarism, but strength with discipline is protection. Many students here come from garden worlds where physical conflict is almost unknown. If they ever find themselves in danger, they have no tools to defend themselves." "I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach." "You're more qualified than anyone else currently available." His form brightened. "Think about it. This could be an opportunity to